Welcome to the sixth video in this series, where we look at number 6 on the OWASP top 10 list, vulnerable and outdated components, which we have briefly mentioned a few times in previous videos on this list. Here the name really does say it all. So okay, just like, subscribe and comment, guys. That's it. Thanks for watching. Okay, just kidding. However, in all seriousness, the name really does say it all. But what can this look like and what we can do? In our application, we use many sorts of different components and libraries. So we don't have to write them all, and this gives us more functionality. However, for an attacker, this is also really convenient a lot of the time. A famous example is in 2017, WannaCry targeted Microsoft Windows computers. Now, this was exploiting a vulnerability in the operating system known as Terminal Blue and had already been patched by Microsoft. However, a lot of businesses and organizations didn't update their software in time, and as a result, WannaCry was able to spread this through networks and hold a lot of computers at ransom. So, the OWASP common examples include stuff like not knowing the component that you're using, just grabbing random stuff from whatever part of the internet and chucking the application. Make sure that the stuff that you're using is reputable. Obviously, using out-of-date stuff. If an update comes out, try and update it. Now, you don't want to be often a lot of the time at the very cutting fine edge, because a lot of time that can introduce exploits. However, a lot of the time you don't want to be too far behind, because then there'll be old exploits that have been discovered. So you want to be somewhere in between, but still pretty relatively up to date. Not scanning for vulnerabilities regularly, and not testing compatibility between libraries. Often the way libraries work together, this can even cause exploits. Alright, let's jump into the technical example. For the technical example, we're mainly going to be looking at the code rather than the website. And what I want to focus on here is this node modules package. If you've never done web development before, these are just a bunch of NPM libraries, which are just libraries for the sake of this video. And these are what we're using in our front end for all the components and libraries, giving us extra code that we haven't wrote. Now can be a pretty big folder. For this application, it's about 630 megabytes, which is a very sizable chunk of the application. An example of components can be outdated, and a relatively famous one was the event stream package. Now, you don't need to know too much about this package. It was basically just a package to stream data for events in our web applications. But what is important in this is that back in 2017, there was a pretty big exploit which allowed hackers to come in and then use people's computers to mine Bitcoin and hold them ransom for it. But what you do need to know is that in 2017, there was an exploit that allowed people to hold people. But what you do need to know about it is in 2017, there was an exploit that allowed attackers to hold people's computers ransom for Bitcoin. And this is a classic example of code that was pushed out, and then people either downloaded the update and made it vulnerable, or downloaded the update and then didn't update the patch. So it's pretty easy to be able to have code that's vulnerable via a component here. So generally, how do we prevent this? Write all your own code and don't use any components? Obviously not. That's not quite feasible for a lot of scenarios, or most in fact. And do you trust yourself and your entire team to write code perfectly without any exploits always and keep that up to date? Probably not. Use component libraries that are from trusted sources. And we did mention this earlier, but don't go onto random website X grabbing whatever library you want and then using that. Go from trusted and well-known sources that you know will be updated in the future. And we've said it once and we'll say it again, keep it simple, stupid. If you don't need to use a component library or some sort of library for whatever, then don't use it. Alright, the less libraries you use, the less that need to be updated and the less potential exploits there will be. And lastly, there are a lot of tools that you can use to check your components that are updated. One example is the OSP dependency check. Alright, and that ends it for the vulnerable and outdated components part. Next, we're going to be talking about identification and authentication failures. See you there.